He took 12 stabs for an alien princess, then woke up to find elite alien guards at his doorstep. The blade caught light before it caught flesh. Dominic Cross registered the glint half a second before his body moved, instinct overriding the careful neutrality expected of security personnel at diplomatic functions. The Archway Prime Summit Chamber was all polished metal and transparent aluminum, designed to symbolize transparency between species. Nobody had considered how well it would showcase an assassination. Ambassador Celiara stood 3 meters away, her elegant profile turned toward the human delegation as she spoke about trade routes and treaty provisions. Her voice carried the precise cadence of someone who'd spent years perfecting diplomatic speech. Her tail, thick and predominantly white with black markings that matched the coloring of her large fox ears, swayed gently behind her, relaxed, unsuspecting. The attacker came from the Volpari side of the room. Dominic didn't think. Thinking got people killed. He launched himself across the space between them as the assassin's arm came down in a practiced arc. The first blade punched through the shoulder of his dress uniform. The second opened his ribs. He felt the third and fourth as pressure more than pain, his body already flooding with adrenaline that turned the world sharp-edged and too bright. He got his hands on the assassin's wrist. They went down together in a tangle of limbs, blood already slicking the polished floor. Somewhere beyond the roaring in his ears, people were screaming. The attacker's face was covered, but the hands were Volpari, longer fingers, different joint articulation. Dominic focused on keeping those hands away from Celiara while his body registered wounds 5, 6, 7. Security converged from all sides, human guards in gray, Volpari sentinels in black armor. The assassin twisted under Dominic, stronger than any human, and drove the blade up under his ribcage. 8. The world tilted. Dominic's grip loosened, his body no longer responding the way it should. Through the tangle of boots and shouts, he saw Celiara's face, her yellow-green eyes wide, pupils dilated into full circles, her ears flat against her skull in shock. Then hands were pulling the assassin away, and Dominic was on his back staring at the ceiling's soft lights while his uniform went from navy to black with blood. His chest felt wrong, hollow and full at the same time. Someone was applying pressure to the wounds, but there were too many. He tried to count them, and lost track somewhere around 9. Celiara's face appeared above him, blocking out the lights. Her ears were still flat, but her expression had shifted into something fierce and focused. She dropped to her knees beside him, her formal robes pooling in his blood without hesitation. "Move," she said to whoever was trying to keep her back. Her voice had lost all diplomatic polish, gone sharp and commanding. "Move now." Volpari hands appeared in his peripheral vision, pulling the human medics away. Celiara's fingers found his face, cool against his skin. Her tail lashed behind her in agitation, black and white blur. "You are severely injured," she said, and Dominic almost laughed at the understatement, except his chest wouldn't expand enough for it. "But you can be saved." Her hands moved to his chest, pressing directly over the worst of the wounds. Her touch burned, not painful but intense, like heat traveling through muscle and bone. Dominic tried to speak and managed only a wet cough. "This will feel strange," Celiara said. Her pupils contracted to vertical slits, focusing with predatory intensity. "Do not fight it." Dominic didn't know what she meant until the burning intensified, spread, became something that felt like being pulled apart and held together simultaneously. His back arched off the floor. The pain that had been building toward unconsciousness suddenly sharpened into perfect, terrible clarity. He could feel every severed nerve, every compromised organ, but beneath that he felt something else, a current running between his body and hers, as though his heartbeat was trying to sync with a rhythm that wasn't quite his own. The chamber was chaos around them. Dominic heard Captain Rourke's voice barking orders, heard the heavy tread of the massive Volpari sentinel he'd seen flanking Celiara earlier. But the ambassador didn't move, didn't look away from him. Her ears slowly rose from their flattened position, trembling with effort. Sweat beaded on her pale forehead. The burning began to fade. Dominic's vision cleared in increments, details sharpening. He saw the strain in Celiara's face, the way her jaw clenched, the minute tremor in her shoulders. Her hands remained pressed to his chest, but now he felt something else, a pulling sensation, as though she was drawing the damage out of him and into herself. "Ambassador, you must stop," someone said above them, the big Volpari sentinel, his rust-red ears pinned back. "The cost?" "I am aware of the cost, Vekresh," Celiara said without looking away from Dominic. Her voice had gone soft but unyielding. "He took 12 wounds meant for me. I will not let him die for that sacrifice." 12. Dominic hadn't even felt the last 3. Time lost meaning. He floated in the space between pain and relief, anchored only by the cool pressure of Celiara's hands and the strange current flowing between them. Gradually, the pulling sensation eased. The world stopped trying to tilt sideways. When Celiara finally lifted her hands, Dominic felt the absence like a broken connection, some new part of him reaching for something that was no longer there. Celiara swayed. Vekresh caught her before she could fall, his massive hands surprisingly gentle as he steadied her. Her ears drooped with exhaustion, and her tail hung limp. But she was still looking at Dominic, her yellow-green eyes searching his face as though memorizing it. "Get him to medical," she said, "and keep him under guard. He is bound now." Ambassador Rourke's voice cut through, sharp with authority and confusion. "What did you just do?" Celiara stood slowly, leaning against Vekresh for support. Blood, Dominic's blood, stained her robes from knee to chest. She looked at Rourke with the full weight of her diplomatic bearing somehow intact despite her exhaustion. "I invoke the ancient law of life-debt," she said. "This human gave his life to preserve mine. By our oldest codes, I am now responsible for that life until the debt is balanced through equal sacrifice. He belongs to the sovereignty until he has been repaid." Rourke's face went carefully blank. "You're claiming a human soldier as property?" "I am fulfilling a sacred obligation," Celiara corrected, her tail lifted slightly, the tip twitching. "One your governments would do well to respect." Dominic tried to sit up and discovered his body still wasn't entirely his to command. Hands pressed him back down, human medics, finally allowed to approach. But he kept his eyes on Celiara as she turned away, Vekresh supporting her weight as they moved toward the Volpari delegation. Her ears rotated once toward him, a small movement he might have imagined. Then the medics blocked his view, and someone pressed something to his neck that sent the world soft and distant. His last coherent thought before unconsciousness was the memory of her hands on his chest and the strange, impossible warmth of her life force flowing into his failing body. 3 days later, Dominic woke to find everything had changed. Dominic woke to the smell of something floral and unfamiliar, undercut by the sterile bite of medical equipment. His body felt strange, not painful exactly, but aware of itself in ways it hadn't been before. He could sense his heartbeat as a presence rather than just a rhythm, feel the movement of blood through vessels that should have been severed. He opened his eyes to find Celiara sitting beside his bed. She wore simpler clothing than the bloodied robes from 3 days ago, a high-necked tunic in deep blue that made her pale skin seem luminous. Her ears swiveled toward him the moment his breathing changed, and her yellow-green eyes tracked his face with an intensity that made him forget to look away. "You're awake," she said, not a question. Dominic's throat felt raw. "How long?" 73 hours since the attack. She leaned forward slightly, her tail shifting behind the chair. "Your body needed time to integrate the transference. Dr. Chen has been monitoring you closely." He tried to sit up and found his body responded better than expected, though a pulling sensation across his ribs made him move carefully. Celiara's hand twitched toward him, then stopped, her fingers curling into her palm instead. "The wounds," Dominic asked, "healed, mostly." Her ears tilted back slightly. "You will have scars. The transference preserves life, but it cannot erase all damage." Dominic looked down at his bare chest, at the 12 raised lines that marked where the blades had entered. They looked weeks old rather than days, pink and sealed, but clearly permanent. He traced one with his finger, feeling the ridge of new tissue. "You saved my life," he said. "You saved mine first." Celiara's tail swished once, decisive. "The debt exists between us now. I must remain at your side until it is balanced through equal sacrifice." "What does that mean?" It means where you go, I go. Her ears flattened slightly, betraying discomfort her voice didn't show. Until one of us preserves the other's life as thoroughly as we were preserved, the bond will not release until the scales are even. Dominic absorbed this, trying to understand the implications. So you're stuck with me. We are bound to each other, Celiara corrected, neither stuck nor free, simply connected. The door opened before Dominic could respond. Captain Rourke entered with her characteristic military precision, her gray eyes sharp as she assessed him. Behind her came the massive form of Sentinel Vekresh, his rust-red ears high and alert, golden eyes fixed on Celiara with protective intensity. "Glad to see you're not dead, Cross," Rourke said without preamble. "Because we have a situation, and you're apparently part of it now whether I like it or not." Dominic straightened despite his body's protests. "Ma'am." "The assassin died in custody before interrogation," Rourke continued. "Poison capsule, standard for professionals. But we pulled surveillance footage, and it's complicated. She pulled up a holographic display with a gesture, images flickering to life above her wrist unit. The attack was coordinated. Multiple entry points, falsified credentials, inside knowledge of security protocols." "Both human and Volpari conspirators," Vekresh added, his voice a low rumble. "This was not random violence. Someone wants the Alliance to fail." Celiara rose smoothly from her chair, her diplomatic mask settling into place. "Then we must investigate together. If the conspiracy spans both species, neither government can be fully trusted." "Exactly why I'm here," Rourke said, though her expression suggested she wasn't pleased about it. "Command wants Cross working with the Volpari investigation. You're already bound by their law, which gives you access to their side of things. Use it." Dominic looked at Celiara, who met his gaze steadily. Her ears were upright now, focused forward in what he was learning to read as determination. "I accept this arrangement," Celiara said. "Dominic and I will work together to find those responsible." The next week blurred into a rhythm of investigation and proximity. They reviewed hours of security footage in a borrowed conference room, Celiara's analytical mind picking apart patterns while Dominic's instincts flagged behavioral inconsistencies. He learned that her ears betrayed her before her voice did, a slight flick when something surprised her, a backward tilt when she was concentrating hard, a full forward point when she found something important. During one long session, Dominic made an observation about human body language that was so obvious yet perfectly stated that Celiara laughed. A sound like bells, startled and genuine. Her ears flicked upward in surprise at her own reaction, and Dominic felt something warm settle in his chest that had nothing to do with healing wounds. The interrogations were harder. They questioned suspects together, and Dominic quickly learned that Celiara's diplomatic training made her excellent at reading lies. But when an angry human detainee lunged across the table at her, Dominic's body moved before his mind caught up. He intercepted the man's rush, taking an elbow to his still healing ribs that made white stars burst across his vision. Celiara's hand caught his arm as he staggered, steadying him with surprising strength. Her pupils dilated with what looked like anger. "Stop," she said, quiet and fierce. "Stop putting yourself between me and danger." "Can't," Dominic managed, breathing through the pain. "It's what I do." Her ears flattened completely. "Your instinct for self-destruction is not admirable." That night, she insisted on checking his wounds herself. They were alone in her quarters, neutral territory within the Volpari embassy section, all clean lines and muted colors. Celiara's touch was clinical at first, fingers probing the inflamed tissue where he'd reopened one of the deeper cuts. But as she worked, her movements gentled, became something more careful. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why are you so willing to die?" Dominic stared at the ceiling, feeling the coolness of her hands against his skin. "Lost my squad 2 years ago. Border skirmish that went wrong. I made the call that put them in position when the ambush hit." He swallowed hard. "Sometimes I think if I just save enough people, it'll balance out." Celiara's hand stilled on his chest, directly over his heart. "That is not how balance works." "Maybe not in your culture." "Not in any culture." Her voice carried something raw beneath the precision. "You cannot repay the dead by joining them." Dominic looked at her then, really looked. Her ears were drooping slightly, and her tail had gone still behind her. "What about you? What weight are you carrying?" She pulled her hands back slowly, as though reluctant to break contact. "I represent my entire species in these negotiations. Every word I speak, every choice I make, millions of lives depend on my success." Her ears tilted back. The loneliness of that responsibility is considerable. "You don't have to be alone in it now," Dominic said. "The bond, right? I'm here." Something shifted in her expression, a crack in the diplomatic armor. "Yes, you are." They found the evidence 3 days later. Encrypted files showing communication between human extremists and Volpari isolationists, all pointing to a coordinated effort to sabotage the alliance. The conspiracy ran deeper than either government wanted to admit, which meant investigating without official support, working in the shadows of Archway Prime's lower levels where surveillance was sparse and danger was real. During a stakeout in the maintenance tunnels, waiting for a suspected courier, they sat in darkness, broken only by the amber glow of Dominic's wrist display. The close quarters put them shoulder to shoulder, and Dominic found himself aware of every point where their bodies touched, her arm against his, the occasional brush of her tail against his leg. "I had 3 siblings," Celiara said into the quiet. "All older, all more suited to political life than I was, but I was the one chosen for this role because I could suppress my emotions most effectively." Her voice carried bitter irony, a skill that now feels like a curse rather than a gift. "I lost count of the people I couldn't save," Dominic admitted. "Stopped trying to remember their names because it hurt too much. Figured if I just kept moving, kept fighting, I could outrun the guilt. Has it worked? Not even a little." Celiara's hand found his in the darkness, her fingers cool and careful as they laced with his. Neither pulled away. They sat like that for 20 minutes, not speaking, just breathing in sync while monitoring the empty corridor ahead. The ambush came without warning. They were moving through a service junction when hostiles opened fire from both ends of the passage, humans and Volpari working together, just like the evidence suggested. Dominic returned fire while Celiara pulled data from a nearby terminal, her fingers flying across the interface even as projectiles sparked off the walls around them. They ran, ducked into a side passage, pressed themselves into an alcove, while footsteps thundered past. Dominic's heart hammered against his ribs. Celiara's ears were flat against her skull, her breathing quick and shallow. They'd made it. They were alive. Celiara turned to him in the cramped space, her face inches from his. Her pupils were fully dilated, her lips parted around rapid breaths. Dominic's hands found her face without permission from his brain, cupping her jaw with fingers that trembled from adrenaline and something else entirely. She kissed him like she was drowning, and he was air. Her mouth tasted like copper and desperation, and her hands fisted in his shirt hard enough to tear. Dominic kissed back with everything he had, all the fear and relief and want he'd been ignoring for days, until they were both gasping and the world had narrowed to just the two of them in the darkness. Celiara pulled back suddenly, her eyes wide with horror. "No, we cannot. I should not have." But Vekresh was already there when they returned, his golden eyes missing nothing. Not their disheveled clothing, not Celiara's swollen lips, not the way they stood too carefully apart. His expression went cold and hard. "Ambassador," he said, voice like stone, "we need to speak now." The Volpari Council's decision came down like a blade. Swift, clean, final. Celiara was confined to the embassy section, pending formal recall to the sovereignty. The life debt would be dissolved by council decree, an unprecedented overriding of ancient law that spoke to how seriously they viewed her transgression. Dominic was forbidden from approaching Volpari territory under threat of arrest. They'd been separated for 5 days, and Dominic felt it like a physical wound. He stood in his quarters staring at surveillance footage that didn't matter anymore, his hand pressed unconsciously to his chest where the 12 scars marked him. Something felt wrong in his body, a discord, like his heartbeat was searching for a rhythm it couldn't find. Dr. Chen had noticed it too, the way his vitals had started fluctuating, but she didn't have an explanation yet. Captain Rourke appeared in his doorway without knocking. "You look like hell, Cross," Permission to speak freely, ma'am? Denied. I'm here to tell you to stand down. The Volpari Council is handling their own, and we're backing their play to keep the alliance intact. Her expression was granite. You're to have no further contact with Ambassador Ciliara? That's an order. Dominic met her eyes. With respect, Captain, I can't follow that order. Then you'll be court-martialed. Yes, ma'am, probably. Rourke studied him for a long moment, her face unreadable. Then she stepped into the room and closed the door behind her. Talk to me, Cross. And it better be good, because I don't enjoy losing soldiers to stupidity. She's dying, Dominic said flatly. I can feel it. The bond, Dr. Chen said it created some kind of biological link. Separating us is killing both of us, just slower than a blade would. He took a breath that didn't quite fill his lungs. And even if it wasn't, I wouldn't let them take her back to face charges for falling in love with the wrong species. Love? Rourke's voice carried disbelief. You've known her for 2 weeks. I've known her in ways that matter. Shared blood, shared danger, shared everything that counts when you're trying to stay alive and stay sane. Dominic's hands clenched at his sides. She saved my life. I'm not letting politics kill her. Rourke was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, You have 12 hours before I report this conversation. What you do with that time is your business, but I never saw you leave this room. Understood? Understood, thank you, ma'am. Don't thank me. If you survive this, you're still getting court-martialed. But there was something almost approving in her eyes as she left. Dominic moved fast. He'd spent years learning how to infiltrate hostile territory, and the Volpari embassy section was just another target, albeit one protected by some of the deadliest warriors in known space. He went through the maintenance access points, the blind spots in their security coverage that he'd mapped during the investigation, moving with the patience of someone who knew rushing meant dying. He made it past 3 checkpoints before Vekresh found him. The massive Volpari sentinel materialized from a side corridor, his rust-red ears forward and alert, golden eyes locked on Dominic with predatory focus. Dominic's hand went to his weapon, but Vekresh raised one clawed hand in a stopping gesture. I could kill you before you clear the holster, Vekresh said conversationally, but I will not. Dominic didn't lower his hand. You're going to stop me. I am going to let you through. Vekresh's ears tilted back slightly, an expression Dominic had learned meant something like resignation. She has not slept in 3 days. She paces her quarters like a caged animal, her tail lashing hard enough to bruise when it strikes the walls. I have served her for 8 years, and I have never seen her like this. He paused. A devotion that drives a human to infiltrate enemy territory alone deserves to be answered. Thank you. Do not thank me. I am betraying my orders for her sake, not yours. But Vekresh stepped aside and gestured down the corridor. 3rd door on the left. You have 2 hours before the guard rotation. Make them count. Ciliara's quarters were elegant and spare. Low furniture, muted colors, a meditation space in one corner. She stood at the window overlooking the station's central hub, her silhouette backlit by the glow of ships moving through the traffic lanes beyond the transparent aluminum. Her ears swiveled toward the door as it opened, and she turned. The formal composure she'd maintained even in crisis was gone. Her hair was loose and tangled, her clothing rumpled, her tail moving in agitated sweeps. When she saw Dominic, her pupils dilated fully, and something broke across her face. Relief and grief and joy all tangled together. You should not be here, she said, but she was already moving toward him. Couldn't stay away. Dominic met her halfway, and then they were holding each other with desperate intensity, her tail wrapping around his leg while he buried his face in her hair, breathing in her scent, something floral and wild that he'd been missing without fully understanding it. They are taking me back to the sovereignty tomorrow, Ciliara said against his shoulder. The council will not be swayed. I will stand trial for betraying our values, for allowing personal feelings to compromise my duty. Her voice cracked. For loving you. Then we run. Dominic pulled back enough to see her face, his hands cupping her jaw the way they had in the darkness of the maintenance tunnel. Dr. Chen found proof that the separation will kill us both. The transference created a permanent link, and I found evidence that Counselor Tavesh orchestrated the assassination attempt himself. Ciliara's ears shot forward. What? Hidden files in the embassy systems. I got Dr. Chen to help me hack in. Tavesh planned the whole thing. The assassination was supposed to succeed, to create an incident that would justify cutting ties with humanity and reigniting the war. Dominic's hands trembled against her face. You were supposed to die. He never expected you to survive, and he definitely didn't expect the life debt. Then I have been a pawn. Her tail lashed once, hard, and innocent lives will be destroyed if he succeeds. So we stop him, but we can't do it from inside a cell, and we can't do it separated. Dominic searched her face. Come with me. We'll find proof. Broadcast it to both governments, force them to act. But it means running, being branded traitors, losing everything. Ciliara's ears tilted back, then slowly rose to full attention. I have already lost everything that matters except you. She took his face in her hands, mirroring his gesture. And I find I cannot serve a government that would rather let a conspiracy destroy millions than allow one ambassador to love a human. Is that what this is? Dominic asked softly. Love? Yes. No hesitation, no diplomatic evasion. I love you, Dominic Cross. Against all logic and duty and cultural conditioning, I love you. He kissed her then, slow and deep and certain, pouring everything he couldn't say into the press of his mouth against hers. She responded with equal fervor, her hands sliding into his hair, her tail tightening around his leg. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dominic pressed his forehead to hers. I love you too, he said, and I'm getting you out of here. They had 90 minutes to gather what they needed. Ciliara moved through her quarters with efficient grace, pulling up files, copying data, selecting only essential items. Healer Marathi appeared 20 minutes in, her amber eyes knowing. I will not stop you, the healer said quietly, but I can help. There is a medical shuttle in Bay 12 that I have access to. It will buy you time. Why would you risk this? Ciliara asked. Because I have seen what the separation is doing to both of you, because I bound you together with that transference, and I will not let politics undo what was meant to preserve life. Mirathi's ears drooped. And because I believe you may be our people's best hope for true peace, even if neither government sees it yet. The escape was a blur of corridors and close calls. They made it to Bay 12 with 10 minutes to spare, Mirathi's credentials opening doors that should have been locked. The medical shuttle was small but fast, designed for emergency evacuations. Dominic ran pre-flight checks while Ciliara uploaded the evidence files to portable storage. Alarms started blaring 3 minutes before they were ready to launch. Dominic swore and pushed the engines harder, willing them to cycle faster. Ciliara's hand found his, her fingers lacing with his in silent solidarity. Whatever happens, she said, I am glad it will be together. The bay doors opened. Security forces poured through, both human and Volpari, weapons raised. For one suspended moment, Dominic thought they were finished. Then Captain Rourke's voice cut through the chaos on the comm. Stand down, let them go. Captain, they are fugitives, someone protested. I said stand down, that's an order. Rourke's face appeared on the shuttle's display, her expression hard as iron, but her eyes knowing. You have 40 seconds, Cross. Don't waste them. The shuttle lifted. They shot through the bay doors into open space. An archway prime fell away behind them, a glittering wheel of metal and light that held everything they'd been and everything they were leaving behind. Ciliara's tail wrapped around Dominic's waist, and he reached over to lace his fingers with hers. Where to? She asked. Wherever we need to go to stop Tavesh. Dominic looked at her, at the way the starlight caught in her yellow-green eyes, and felt something settle in his chest. Not peace exactly, but rightness. Together. Together, Ciliara agreed, and squeezed his hand as they jumped to faster-than-light travel, leaving their old lives behind for something new and uncertain and entirely their own. They had 72 hours before Tavesh's plan reached culmination, a coordinated attack on the summit's closing ceremony that would shatter any hope of peace between their species. Dominic piloted the stolen shuttle while Ciliara worked through encrypted files, her fingers dancing across holographic displays. They moved in seamless coordination, the bond between them humming with connection deeper than words. "There," Celiara said, ears perking forward. "Neutral station Ember's Edge. Tavish is meeting the human extremists in person." "Risky, which means critical." Her tail swished. "We infiltrate, record everything, broadcast before they silence us." Ember's Edge was a half-forgotten fueling station on the border of lawless space. They docked at a peripheral bay and moved through cramped corridors with weapons drawn and senses alert. The meeting occupied a sealed cargo hold deep in the station's industrial section. Dominic counted 5 guards, 3 human, 2 Volpari, all positioned to kill. He and Celiara exchanged a look. They'd planned this during the flight, each knowing their role without discussion. Dominic's distraction, a small explosive in an adjacent corridor, sent guards running. Celiara slipped through the maintenance access, her form moving with predatory silence. Dominic followed, covering her while she positioned recording devices and tapped into the hold's systems. Tavesh's voice echoed through the space, cultured and cold. "The ceremony in 6 hours. Simultaneous explosions designed to look like mutual attack. The Alliance will die in fire, and our peoples will finally understand that coexistence was always impossible." Celiara's devices captured everything. Her hands moved with calm precision despite the fear Dominic felt radiating through their connection. They had what they needed. Now they just had to survive. The guard rotation came early. A Volpari sentinel caught Celiara backing out of the access point. Dominic's stunner took him down, but the sound carried. Suddenly the hold erupted. Guards converging, weapons charging, voices shouting. They ran. Celiara clutched the data storage while Dominic laid covering fire. A projectile whistled past his ear. Another sparked off the bulkhead beside Celiara's head. They fought back to back the way they'd learned during the investigation. He covered her vulnerable moments. She anticipated his reckless moves, both protecting each other with instinctive understanding. But there were too many. They got cornered with hostiles closing from both directions. Dominic checked his weapon, 20% charge, not enough. "The shuttle's autopilot," Celiara said quietly. "If we transmit now, it can broadcast even if we don't survive." Always thinking ahead, Dominic managed a smile. "That's why you're the ambassador." "Former ambassador," she corrected, but her tail wrapped around his leg. She was uploading files when the extremists rushed their position. Dominic met them head-on using his body as shield while she worked. Projectiles impacted his shoulder, his leg, but he stayed upright through stubborn need to buy her seconds. Any time at all. Then Celiara screamed his name. He turned and saw the Volpari sentinel aiming for his chest. Celiara threw herself between them without hesitation. The projectile took her in the side instead. She went down hard, blood blooming across her tunic. Something broke in Dominic's chest. He eliminated the remaining threats with cold efficiency, then dropped to his knees beside her. Her blood was hot against his palms, flowing too fast. Her pupils had contracted to pinpoints, ears flat against her skull. "No," Dominic said, "you don't get to die, not for me." "Did it transmit?" she whispered. "I don't care. Stay with me." He gathered her into his arms and started moving toward the docking bay. She was too light, too still. "That's an order." Dr. Chen was waiting at the shuttle. Marathi had sent coordinates somehow. She took one look at Celiara, and her face went pale. "Surgery now." The next hour blurred. Dominic held Celiara's hand while Chen worked, while Marathi assisted with Volpari procedures, while his mind replayed her throwing herself into the projectile's path over and over. Celiara's eyes opened briefly, unfocused with pain. She spoke in her native tongue, words Dominic didn't understand but felt in every syllable. Her hand tightened on his, desperate and weak. "What is she saying?" Dominic demanded. Marathi's ears drooped. "She tells you she loves you, that saving you was worth dying for." "She's not dying." Dominic leaned closer. "You're not dying, I won't let you." Chen pulled back, expression grim. "The damage is too extensive," unless she looked at Marathi. "The life transference," Marathi said quietly. He could save her the way she saved him, complete the debt cycle. "Tell me what to do," Dominic said. Marathi guided his hands to Celiara's chest, directly over her heart. The position mirrored exactly how Celiara had touched him in the summit chamber. Focus on the connection between you, Marathi instructed. Pour your strength through that channel. Don't stop until I tell you. Dominic closed his eyes and found the bond immediately. That strange resonance he'd felt since waking, the sense of Celiara's heartbeat parallel to his own. He pushed against it, willing his strength through the connection. The burning was immediate and intense. He felt his life force flowing into her, felt his heartbeat slow as hers strengthened. Sweat broke across his forehead, his hands trembled, but he didn't stop, just kept giving everything he had. Celiara's eyes snapped open, pupils dilating. Her hand caught his wrist, and through their connection he felt her trying to pull back, trying to refuse because it was costing him too much. But Dominic held firm, pouring more of himself into her until the world grayed at the edges. Enough, Marathi said sharply, pulling his hands away. Any more and you'll kill yourself. Dominic collapsed beside the table, but he kept his eyes on Celiara, watching color return to her skin, watching her breathing deepen. Her tail twitched, her ears rose slowly from their flattened position. When Chen rechecked the wound, the bleeding had stopped and the tissue was knitting itself together. The debt is balanced, Marathi said softly. You've both saved each other. The bond is complete. Celiara sat up slowly, her hand reaching for Dominic where he lay sprawled. She slid down beside him, gathering him against her chest the way he'd carried her, and pressed her face to his hair. You gave too much, she whispered. You always give too much. Had to keep you, Dominic managed. Worth it. Chen confirmed the data had transmitted to both governments, evidence of Tavesh's conspiracy now impossible to suppress. Within hours, authorities moved against the extremists, dismantling the plot before the attack could occur. The charges came later, but so did testimonies. Rourke speaking for Dominic, Vekresh for Celiara, Chen providing medical evidence of the biological bond. The proceedings took weeks, and through all of it, Dominic and Celiara remained together, their presence a quiet challenge to every law and prejudice that said their connection was impossible. The final ruling granted them conditional sanctuary as official liaisons between species, not quite pardoned, not quite free, but no longer hunted. A new category created specifically for them, two people who'd proven that love across species lines was powerful enough to prevent war. They stood together on Archway Prime's observation deck, watching ships arrive for renewed peace talks, negotiations that wouldn't have happened without their sacrifice. Celiara's hand was warm in Dominic's, her tail wrapped around his waist in casual intimacy that would have been scandalous weeks ago, but was now simply theirs. No regrets? Dominic asked quietly. Celiara looked up at him, her yellow-green eyes luminous in starlight. None. You? Not one. He brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles, though I'm still getting used to being a political symbol. We're not symbols. Her ears tilted forward in determination. We're simply two people who chose each other. The rest is what others make of it. Good answer, Ambassador. Former ambassador, she corrected, but she was smiling. They stayed like that as ships continued their graceful dance beyond the window, two warriors who'd found peace in each other, their quiet intimacy a testament to trust earned through sacrifice rather than promised through ceremony, their love proof that some bonds transcend species, duty, and fear.